These are the 25 most powerful beings in Runeterra, ranked from extraordinary mortals and ascended warriors to entities capable of threatening worlds, stars, and reality itself. I will move through the list one place at a time, explaining what each being has accomplished, where their power comes from, and what prevents them from ranking any higher. Before the list begins, there is one important limit to set. Riot has never released an official power ranking for every character in the setting, and the lore rarely gives us clean measurements. There are no reliable numbers telling us how much magical force Syndra can release, how many armies Mordekaiser could defeat, or whether one spirit god would overpower another in a direct contest. Runeterra is not built like a tournament bracket. Knowledge, preparation, belief, location, and the rules of different realms can matter as much as raw strength. This ranking is based on 4 things. The first is demonstrated power, meaning actions that appear in biographies, stories, and major events. The second is scale, because threatening one city is different from threatening a continent or an entire reality. The third is endurance, since some beings can be defeated physically while their true essence survives. The final factor is limitation. A character may possess enormous power, but remain restricted by a mortal body, an imprisoned state, a need for worship, or a weapon that can contain them. The word being also matters here. This list includes mortals, transformed mortals, spirits, demons, celestial entities, and the watchers beyond the void. It does not rank objects such as the world runes by themselves, even though those objects can carry more destructive potential than many characters. It also avoids alternate skin universes, gameplay mechanics, and promotional battles that do not belong to the main Runeterra setting. Power changes meaning as we move through those categories. A mortal mage usually acts through a physical body and personal knowledge. An ascended warrior carries celestial magic inside a transformed body designed to endure it. A spirit god exists through a relationship between the spirit realm, the land, and the people who keep its stories alive. A demon feeds through emotion, while a celestial being may follow laws that were never made for the physical world. Those differences make a direct duel useful only up to a point. Nasus might defeat a human ruler in moments, but his greater value could come from recognizing a forgotten ritual in an archive. Kindred may not conquer a fortress, because death has no reason to occupy its walls. Bard could end a crisis by moving one artifact without ever fighting the army gathered around it. The Watchers do not need to win a throne when their goal is to remove the reality containing the throne. Location can reverse an apparent advantage. Lysandra, standing above the howling abyss, has access to knowledge, true ice, prepared defenses, and thousands of years spent studying one enemy. The same sorceress, surprised on unfamiliar ground, would not carry every part of that system with her. Ilawi near a Buru temple can call on traditions and divine manifestations that may not appear identically on a distant mountain. A spirit god remembered by an entire region may manifest more strongly than the same spirit among people who have forgotten its name. Preparation changes the list just as sharply. Rise with no warning remains a formidable mage, yet Rise, who knows the location of a world rune, becomes part of a crisis far above ordinary combat. Mordekaiser, separated from his armies in the realm of death, is not the same threat as Mordekaiser returning through a prepared vessel after centuries of planning. Aatrox, surrounded by available hosts, can rebuild his warform, while the sword left untouched and isolated cannot march anywhere by itself. Belief is another form of power that resists measurement. Volibear grows through people who worship the old wilderness and fear the loss of strength. Ornn survives in quieter stories about craft, fire, and work done properly. kindred wears masks recognized across cultures, though those cultures do not all tell the same story. When belief changes, the spirit does not lose a fixed number of points. Its identity, reach, and way of appearing may change with the people remembering it. The physical and spirit realms also overlap, without following identical rules. A blade can end a mortal body, while the spirit attached to that body may enter another realm, remain bound to an object, or become trapped by magic. Viego, Mordekaiser, the Darkin, and the Death Spirits all survive through different systems. Calling each one immortal would hide the important question, which is what kind of action can actually end or contain them. The same caution applies to titles. A character called a god may be a regional spirit sustained by worship, an aspect expressing a celestial concept, or an immensely powerful being described through religion. The word does not place everyone on one level. A demigod such as Volibear and a star-forging celestial dragon can both inspire worship without possessing remotely similar scale. Feats provide the strongest ground, though even feats require context. Aatrox destroying the aspect of war confirms that his weapon can reach and end a celestial presence under the conditions of that battle. It does not automatically prove that every swing carries more power than every other god. Lysandra trapping the Watchers confirms extraordinary sorcery and timing, not that she could defeat their full power in open conflict. Potential receives less weight than accomplishment. Syndra may possess a higher limit than anyone around her understands, and Belveth may eventually consume enough of reality to challenge the top of the ranking. Until the stories show that future, it remains a possibility rather than a completed result. The unknown makes a character dangerous, but an unknown limit cannot honestly be treated as infinite. Restraint works in the opposite direction. Soraka chooses healing, Morgana suppresses parts of her celestial nature, and Bard often solves danger without destruction. Their lack of ruined cities does not prove a lack of power. It means the evidence appears through protection, travel, spiritual authority, and control, rather than the easiest kind of spectacle to compare. With that framework, the ranking is best understood as a map of confirmed power rather than a promise about every possible fight. Close placements can change through circumstance, while the largest gaps separate beings whose actions operate on entirely different scales. The list begins where a transformed warrior can dominate mortal conflict, then rises until the conflict concerns the survival of reality itself. With those rules in place, the list begins with two brothers who once stood near the summit of the greatest mortal empire Runeterra has ever known. Number 25. Nasus takes the 25th position because he represents the lower edge of godlike power in Runeterra. Calling him the lower edge may sound strange since he is an immortal ascended warrior revered as a demigod, but this list quickly rises into forces that do not live by ordinary physical rules. Nasus belongs here because he combines supernatural strength, ancient magic, strategic intelligence, and thousands of years of experience in one remarkably durable form. Long before modern Shurima, Nasus served the Empire as a scholar, general, and guardian of knowledge. His intelligence distinguished him even before his ascension. Where many great warriors built their reputations through direct conquest, Nasus could win through planning, logistics, and a patient understanding of his enemies. Shurima eventually chose him for the Ascension ritual, transforming a dying mortal into a powerful jackal-headed being connected to celestial magic through the sun disk. That transformation placed him far above ordinary soldiers and mages. Ascended warriors could lead campaigns across vast territories, survive damage that would end a mortal life, and wield magic through bodies built to contain it. Nasus, also commands spiritual and destructive powers associated with decay, fire, sand, and the weakening of living enemies. Those abilities are not merely tricks from the game translated into lore. His stories consistently present him as an ancient being whose presence changes the balance of any conflict around him. What makes Nasus especially dangerous is that strength is only one part of him. A reckless demigod can be trapped, redirected, or provoked into a mistake, but Nasus studies first. He preserved knowledge when Shurima collapsed, watched civilizations change during his isolation, and returned when the restored empire created a new purpose for him. Given time to prepare, he could understand an enemy's history, locate the source of its power, and choose a battle that favors him. His greatest confirmed limitation is scale. Nasus is mighty enough to defeat armies and contend with other Ascended, yet the lore does not show him reshaping entire realms or threatening the foundations of reality. Even among Shurima's transformed warriors, he is not presented as an unlimited source of arcane force. He can be wounded, overwhelmed, or confronted by opponents whose magic exceeds what the Ascension ritual gave him. Renekton also exposes a personal weakness. Nasus carries guilt over his brother's suffering and cannot treat that conflict as a simple military problem. Their bond clouds the judgment that normally makes him so effective, which means his most dangerous opponent can reach him in a way no invading army could. Power in Runeterra often fails through emotion before it fails through force. Nasus ranks above nearly every normal mortal because centuries of knowledge, an ascended body, and a master strategist's mind make him extraordinarily difficult to defeat. He remains at number 25 because every name ahead of him either carries greater raw power, operates beyond the limits of a physical body, or has demonstrated influence on a much larger scale. The next position belongs to the brother who once became Shurima's greatest battlefield weapon, then emerged from imprisonment with his mind shattered and his fury intact. Number 24. Renekton stands at number 24, one place above Nasus, because his entire ascended form was shaped around direct warfare. Nasus is the superior planner, scholar, and long-term strategist, but Renekton was the champion ancient Shurima, placed at the front of its hardest battles. When the question becomes immediate destructive force, his brother has the advantage. Before his ascension, Renekton was already a celebrated warrior who led Shurima's armies through repeated victories. His loyalty to Nasus ultimately brought him to the Sun Disk, where celestial power transformed him into the crocodile-headed fighter known in the present age. The Empire did not choose him for diplomacy or quiet study. It created a living engine of battle, strong enough to break enemy lines and durable enough to remain standing while ordinary forces collapsed around him. Renekton's most important historical act also reveals the scale of his courage and endurance. When Xerath's stolen ascension devastated the capital, Nasus recognized that the newly transformed Magus could not be defeated through normal combat. The brothers forced Xerath into a magical tomb, but holding him there required someone to remain trapped with him. Renekton accepted that burden, keeping one of the most powerful ascended beings contained while the world above moved through centuries of change. That imprisonment did not leave him unchanged. Xerath gradually poisoned Renekton's understanding of the past, turning his love for Nasus into hatred. By the time both prisoners escaped, Renekton no longer saw his brother as the person who had tried to save Shurima. He saw a betrayer. The result was a being with the strength of an ascended warlord and far less of the discipline that once directed it. In a direct clash, that fury can make Renekton more dangerous than Nasus. Pain, exhaustion, and intimidation do not restrain him in the way they restrain mortals. His transformed body can grow into a more imposing battle form, and the ancient rage stored within him drives attacks that few physical opponents could withstand. He does not need a complicated ritual or a carefully prepared source of magic before becoming dangerous. The weapon is already awake, yet the same anger that raises Runeterra above his brother also keeps him near the bottom of this list. His judgment is damaged, his goals can be manipulated, and his attention remains fixed on a false version of his past. An enemy who cannot overpower him may still misdirect him. Compared with the beings above him, Runeterra also lacks a clear ability to alter nations, spirit realms, or the structure of magic itself. His immortality is formidable rather than absolute. Ascended bodies can endure for ages, but the history of the Darkin proves that beings created by the sun disk can be killed, imprisoned, or sealed into weapons through sufficiently powerful magic. Runeterra is not beyond consequence. He is simply far beyond ordinary life. Number 24 fits him because he may defeat Nasus in a contest of immediate physical violence, especially if Nasus hesitates, but raw ferocity becomes less decisive as the list continues. The next being is physically mortal, yet he carries knowledge of magical forces that once threatened to tear civilization apart. Number 23. Rise reaches number 23 through an unusual combination of mortal vulnerability and world-level responsibility. He does not possess an ascended body, a divine title, or a spirit form that returns through belief. What he possesses is knowledge, discipline, ancient magic, and access to the most dangerous artifacts known to the mortal world. The world runes are fragments of the power involved in shaping Runeterra. Their discovery did not create a peaceful age of understanding. Mortal rulers and mages used them as weapons, beginning the Rune Wars and leaving devastation across the world. Rise witnessed what happened when people treated that power as a path to victory, and his life's purpose became the recovery and concealment of the runes before anyone could repeat the catastrophe. That mission matters to his placement. Rise is not ranked as though he constantly carries every world rune into battle, because the artifacts are separate from him, and he refuses to use them casually. Still, knowledge of their locations, behavior, and history gives him a relationship with power that very few living beings share. If circumstances became desperate enough, he might stand closer to a world-ending force than almost any mortal on Runeterra. Even without relying on the runes, Rise is an exceptional mage. He has crossed distant regions, survived conflicts that ended lesser lives, and developed mastery over arcane energy through long practice. His magic can bind opponents, release concentrated force, and open passages across great distances. Those abilities make him dangerous in combat, but their greater value lies in mobility and control. Rise can appear where a crisis is forming, move people or objects before an enemy understands his plan, and deny access to the very weapon an opponent is seeking. His restraint is part of his strength. Runeterra contains many characters with more raw power than wisdom, and the Rune Wars taught Rise that using every available weapon is not the same as winning. He understands that a victory capable of destroying the land being defended is only another kind of defeat. That lesson separates him from conquerors such as Xerath and Mordekaiser, whose ambition grows with every source of power they discover. The problem is that discipline cannot remove his mortal limits. Rise ages slowly because of his exposure to magic, but the law still treats him as a man rather than an immortal god. He can be injured, surprised, or exhausted. His greatest artifacts are intentionally locked away, and his refusal to unleash them means a ranking based on usable personal power must remain cautious. Rise also carries the weakness of secrecy. Protecting the world while revealing almost nothing makes alliances difficult, and the betrayal of his old master taught him how quickly good intentions can bend around absolute power. He often chooses isolation because trust creates another path to the runes. That decision protects his mission, though it can leave him facing enormous threats without the support a united response might provide. At number 23, Rise sits above the two Shurman brothers because the ceiling of his magic is connected to forces capable of changing the world, and his ability to travel, contain, and prepare gives him options that pure warriors lack. He remains below the next character because her natural magical output appears to grow without the same dependence on guarded artifacts. Number 22. Syndra takes number 22 as one of the clearest examples of raw magical potential appearing in a mortal life. She did not receive power from the sun disk, inherit an aspect's celestial fire, or form a willing bond with a demon. Her magic emerged naturally, grew beyond the expectations of those around her, and resisted every attempt to make it small. As a child in Ionia, Syndra's emotions affected the environment through uncontrolled force. Her family and village feared what they could not manage, and the response to that fear pushed her toward a teacher who promised control. The arrangement concealed a deeper purpose. Rather than helping Syndra understand the full extent of her abilities, her mentor restrained them, believing her magic threatened the spiritual balance of Ionia. When Syndra discovered that betrayal, the restrictions failed. Her power erupted, and the consequences confirmed that the fear surrounding her had never been baseless. Ionian authorities eventually placed her in a magically induced sleep beneath the dreaming pool, choosing containment because guidance and confrontation had both failed. Even then, imprisonment did not settle the problem forever. War disturbed the balance around her resting place, and Syndra awakened. One of her most striking feats followed that return. Syndra tore a fortress from its foundations and raised it into the sky, transforming a prison into a moving symbol of freedom and isolation. The importance of that act is easy to miss if it is reduced to the image of a floating building. She manipulated an enormous mass through magic after emerging from a long confinement. And she did it as an expression of will rather than through an elaborate machine or a circle of cooperating mages. Her dark spheres concentrate emotion and magical force into weapons she can direct with precision. Telekinesis allows her to move objects, restrain enemies, and turn the environment itself into part of an attack. More troubling than any single technique is the suggestion that the normal limits placed on mortal mages do not apply to her in the expected way. The title, Dark Sovereign, reflects autonomy as much as aggression. Syndra refuses to let teachers, governments, or spiritual traditions decide how much power she is permitted to become. That refusal makes her difficult to rank. Her upper boundary remains unknown, which is not the same as being limitless. The lore proves that she possesses astonishing potential, yet it has not shown her defeating a cosmic entity, conquering a continent, or surviving the destruction of a physical body. She is still connected to mortal emotions, mortal choices, and a form that can be contained under the right conditions. Syndra's relationship with Ionia creates another complication. Ionian magic often depends on balance between the physical and spirit realms, while Syndra's power can damage or distort that balance. This means the land itself may resist her, but it also means conventional Ionian methods could struggle to predict her. The people most capable of understanding local magic may be the very people whose assumptions she breaks. Number 22 recognizes that potential without treating every unknown as proof of infinite strength. Syndra may eventually rise far higher if future stories reveal the full reach of her abilities. For now, the next position belongs to a ruler whose ascension restored not only his life, but the heart of a fallen empire. Number 21. Azir ranks at number 21 because his return changed the physical and political shape of Shurima. He is not simply another ascended warrior. His transformation became tied to the restoration of the Empire itself, allowing an ancient capital and its sun disk to rise from centuries of burial. In his first life, Azir was the final emperor of Old Shurima. He planned to free the Empire's enslaved people and elevate Zirath, the companion who had grown beside him, but he kept that decision secret until the day of his ascension. Zirath interpreted years of delay as proof that Azir would never surrender the system that benefited him. At the ceremony, betrayal destroyed both the Emperor and the civilization he intended to reform. Thousands of years later, Sevir's blood and an act of compassion restored Azir. His ascension finally occurred, and the desert answered his return. Water flowed again, structures rose from the sand, and the lost capital reappeared beneath the sun disk. Those events place him above an individual battlefield champion. Azir can direct magical soldiers, shape sand on a huge scale, and embody the authority of an empire that once dominated much of the known world. His army deserves careful attention. Azir does not need to recruit, feed, or transport every soldier he commands in the ordinary way. He can form disciplined warriors from sand and direct them as extensions of his will. Against a normal kingdom, that ability changes the mathematics of war. Defeating one formation does not necessarily exhaust his population, and fortifications offer less protection when the land around them can become part of the attacking force. The restored sun disk adds another layer. Shurima's greatest monument was built to channel celestial power into mortal vessels, creating the Ascended. Azir's connection to that legacy gives him more than personal strength, though the exact limits of the restored structure remain uncertain. It would be inaccurate to assume he can casually create new Ascended whenever he chooses. What the lore confirms is that his return revived the center of an ancient magical civilization. Azir's weaknesses come from the same place as his strength. He thinks as an emperor, and the restored Shurima in his mind is not automatically the future every modern Shuriman wants. Pride once prevented him from trusting Zirath with the truth, and pride still shapes the way he approaches nations that developed during his absence. Commanding sand is easier than commanding people who have lived for generations without him. His power also remains below Zirath's concentrated arcane force. Azir completed a legitimate ascension and gained immense abilities, but Zirath forced the ritual beyond its intended path and became something closer to living magical energy. Their conflict is not settled, and Azir's restored empire faces enemies within Shurima as well as threats beyond it. Number 21 fits because Azir can transform a region, produce armies, and restore monuments on a scale Syndra has not yet demonstrated. He does not rise further because the next beings either possess stronger control over ancient magic, survived catastrophes that remade nations, or operate through forms that ordinary victory cannot permanently remove. Number 20. Lysandra takes number 20 because she has survived since the age when the Freljord's oldest legends were still present events. Her greatest achievement was not creating the threat beneath the ice, but stopping it after her own choices helped bring it into the world. Few characters on this list carry a victory and a failure of such enormous scale in the same history. In the distant past, Lysandra and her sisters Cyrilda and Avarosa sought power that could secure their rule. Lysandra made contact with entities that existed beyond the material realm, later known as the Watchers, and accepted gifts that changed the three sisters and their followers. Those gifts helped create the Iceborne, mortals capable of wielding true ice without immediately dying from its touch. The bargain concealed a cost. The Watchers did not intend to remain distant patrons. They sought entry into reality, a realm whose very existence offended the stillness they had known beyond it. When they began to cross into the Freljord, Lysandra finally understood that her ambitions had opened a path for something no human kingdom could control. Her response became one of the largest magical acts in Runeterra's history. Lysandra sacrificed the armies gathered around the breach, including her sisters and many of their followers, to seal the Watchers beneath a vast barrier of true ice. The precise event is wrapped in legend, and the people of the modern Freljord do not know its full truth, but the result remains visible. The frozen citadel stands above prisoners whose awakening could end far more than one northern civilization. Maintaining that prison has defined Lysandra's long existence. She rules the Frostguard, suppresses dangerous versions of the past, and enters dreams in search of anything that might weaken the beings below. Her magic extends through ice, sleep, illusion, memory, and the manipulation of people who believe they serve a sacred tradition. She can preserve herself across ages while shaping the story an entire region tells about its origin. That combination of personal sorcery and institutional control places her above Azir. His empire has returned in a dramatic burst, while Lysandra has managed a secret war for thousands of years. Her enemies are not merely rival rulers. Every generation she preserves the seal is another generation in which reality continues. The problem is that her victory was never complete. The true ice is a prison, not a final defeat, and Lysandra knows it is weakening. Dreams help keep the Watchers dormant, yet even dreams cannot guarantee endless safety. Her power is extraordinary, partly because it has been applied with preparation, location, and sacrifice, on a scale that cannot be reproduced casually in every battle. Lysandra also remains afraid. That fear does not make her weak, since it is a rational response to what sleeps below, but it shapes every decision she makes. She erases histories, eliminates threats, and controls the Freljord, because she believes any instability could expose the world to something worse. The Guardian and the Tyrant have become impossible to separate. Number 20 recognizes a sorceress who contained beings far above her own rank and maintained the containment through ages of secrecy. She does not rank alongside the Watchers themselves, because trapping a vastly stronger enemy through a unique ritual does not mean she could overpower one directly. The next being also transformed the fate of a region, but his influence escaped its homeland and spread through the black mist. Number 19. Viego stands at number 19 because his grief triggered the ruination, and the supernatural force born from that catastrophe later reached across Runeterra. He began as a mortal king, yet the being who emerged from the disaster no longer obeyed the boundaries of mortal life, ordinary distance, or a single physical body. More than 1,000 years before the present era, Viego ruled Camavor. He cared little for the duties of government and fixed his attention on Isolde, his queen. When she died, he rejected every limit placed before him and carried her to the Blessed Isles, where sacred waters were said to possess restorative power. The attempt failed catastrophically when incompatible magic collided with his enchanted sword and the protective forces of the Isles. The Blessed Isles became the Shadow Isles, a land once known for learning, spiritual study, and guarded magical treasures disappeared beneath the black mist, while countless inhabitants became trapped in distorted forms. Viego returned as an unliving spectre at the center of that curse. His desire did not fade with time, and the mist carried that obsession far beyond the ruined kingdom. Viego's greatest advantage is reach. Harrowings allow the black mist to leave the Shadow Isles and descend on distant coasts, bringing hostile spirits into the mortal world. During the larger ruination, his influence expanded across multiple regions. Champions, rulers, and defenders, separated by oceans, became part of one crisis because the mist ignored the borders that normally contain wars. He can also dominate the spirits or bodies of others, turning capable opponents into servants and using their strengths against former allies. This makes a fight with Viego unstable. Defeating one of his followers may free that person, but losing even one powerful defender can strengthen his side immediately. His army grows through the failure of resistance. The source of this power is also a weakness. Viego's mind remains focused on Isolde, and that obsession narrows his ability to understand the world around him. He can command a supernatural catastrophe without possessing the discipline of an experienced general such as Nasus or the patient planning of Lysandra. Enormous force follows a purpose that is emotionally simple, which allows others to predict, deceive, or redirect him. His history also proves that he can be contained. The Sentinels and their allies did not erase the Black Mist from existence, yet they separated Viego from the goal driving the ruination and stopped his immediate campaign. His defeat required rare weapons, knowledge of the Isles, and cooperation across regions. But it still exposed the difference between a world-threatening event and an unstoppable being. Viego ranks above Lysandra in immediate reach because the mist can engulf distant nations and convert defenders into extensions of his will. Lysandra's influence is deeper and more carefully managed, while Viego's can spread with shocking speed. He remains below the next entry because her strength comes through a bond with one of the oldest demons known to Runeterra, a source of power that has already been tested against legendary monsters. Number 18. Nyla and the power of Ashlesh Nila occupies number 18. But her placement must be explained with care. The power being ranked is not the demon Ashlesh alone, since Ashlesh remains imprisoned, and it is not Nyla separated from that bond. This position belongs to Nila as she exists in the lore, a highly trained warrior channeling a controlled portion of the Demon of Joy. Nila came from Cathcan, a distant region with traditions built around confronting supernatural threats. She sought power great enough to face monsters that ordinary heroes could not challenge, and that search brought her to Ashlesh. The demon belongs to the oldest circle of its kind, associated with a fundamental emotion rather than the narrower appetites shown by many lesser demons. The bargain gave Nila tremendous strength, but it changed her inner life. Joy became the only emotion she could fully experience, while memories of her former identity faded from the world. This is not simply a cheerful warrior receiving a magical weapon. Her power rests on an agreement that altered how she relates to every victory, warning, and loss. Ashlesh manifests through a liquid form that Nila shapes into a flexible blade. That weapon can strike enormous creatures, move with unusual reach, and channel force beyond what her human frame should produce. Nila does not depend on uncontrolled bursts. Her martial training lets her direct the demon's power with discipline, turning an ancient supernatural source into precise action. Her choice of opponents reveals the scale she considers appropriate. Nila travels in search of the world's most dangerous creatures and treats legendary threats as the reason for her journey rather than obstacles to avoid. She confronted grave dangers connected to Bilgewater and the wider supernatural world, building a reputation around victories that would become the final chapter of an ordinary champion's life. Ashlesh's imprisonment prevents this placement from becoming much higher. Nila channels power through established rules and techniques. She does not unleash the demon's complete essence. The distinction matters because a fraction of a primordial being's power may be enough to defeat monsters without granting control over nations, realms, or celestial structures. Her mortal body creates another limit. Training and supernatural protection make Nyla far tougher than a normal person, yet her existence still depends on maintaining the bond and surviving the battles she actively seeks. She is not a spirit god that can return through worship, an ascended consciousness sealed into a weapon, or a celestial traveler whose true nature lies beyond the physical world. Number 18 places her above Viego because she channels an ancient demon while retaining the skill and will to direct that force against other major threats. The ranking remains conservative because much of Ashlesh is still bound, and the law has not shown Neela reshaping a continent or defeating an entity from the highest tiers. The next being required no partnership with an imprisoned power. He turned the Ascension ritual itself into an act of theft and emerged as a storm of arcane energy barely contained by a broken shell. Number 17. Zirith takes number 17 as one of the most magically concentrated beings in the physical world. Other Ascended received celestial power through a ritual designed to transform and stabilize them. Zirith sees that ritual at its peak, drawing in far more energy than had been intended for him, and leaving the capital of Shurima in ruins. His rise began in slavery, where intelligence offered possibilities that status denied. Zirath grew beside Azir and became the future Emperor's closest companion, advisor, and secret master of forbidden magic. Azir promised change without revealing his plan, while Zirath watched the Empire continue to depend on a system that treated him and countless others as property. By the day of Azir's ascension, trust had collapsed. Zirath took the Emperor's place beneath the sun disk and claimed the celestial force descending through it. The result did not produce a normal ascended body. Arcane energy burned away the person he had been, leaving a powerful consciousness surrounded by the shattered pieces of a magical sarcophagus. The disaster destroyed ancient Shurima's center and ended an empire that had dominated the continent. Zirath did not accomplish that through a long military campaign. One stolen transformation released enough energy to erase the future Azir believed he was about to create. When Nasus and Renekton confronted him, they could not simply destroy him. Their solution was imprisonment, and Renekton remained inside the tomb to help keep the seal intact. Millennia of confinement did not exhaust Zirath. Once the tomb opened, he returned to a changed world with his magical essence still active and his ambition undiminished. He now seeks a civilization built around his rule, competing with a restored Azir for the future of Shurima. In raw magical output, Zirath exceeds the Ascended ranked below him. He is less a warrior who casts spells than a spell that learned to rule. Lightning, arcane blasts, and destructive energy form his natural language of combat. A physical blow capable of harming Nasus or Renekton may have little meaning against a being whose visible shell is already broken. His limitations are control, confinement, and political isolation. Zirath possesses followers and conquered territory, yet building a lasting empire requires more than destroying opposition. Azir can raise cities and summon ordered armies, while Zirath's history repeatedly turns power into devastation. He may win the battlefield and still inherit nothing but another ruin. The sarcophagus around him also suggests that structure matters. Ancient magic could bind him before, which means enough knowledge and preparation might bind him again. His essence is extraordinarily hard to destroy, but the list soon reaches beings whose survival is rooted in entire spiritual systems rather than one transformed consciousness. At number 17, Zirath ranks above Nyla because his own form contains immense arcane force, and his ascension ended an empire in a single catastrophe. He stays below the next two entries because their celestial inheritance connects them to powers beyond Shurima's ritual, and because their shared history shows what happens when divine law and mortal compassion become opposing weapons. Number 16. Morgana takes number 16 as the first being on this list, born directly from a union of celestial and mortal nature. She and Kael are daughters of Mihura, the mortal host of the aspect of justice, and both inherited a divided form of their mother's power. Morgana ranks below her sister in visible destructive force. but treating her restraint as weakness would misunderstand the source of her strength. The twins were born during the Rune Wars, when uncontrolled magic displaced families and destroyed nations. Their father carried them away from Targon and eventually settled in the region that became Demacia. There, the sisters grew into winged protectors whose abilities inspired stories long after they disappeared from public life. Morgana's magic reflects judgment through understanding rather than judgment through distance. She binds the guilty, shields those threatened by hostile magic, and forces people to confront the pain their choices created. Her dark fire is still celestial fire. The color and method differ from Kael's radiance, but both sisters draw from the same inherited source. That source became unmistakable when conflict erupted between them. Kael's response to violence in early Demacia escalated toward punishment from above, while Morgana stood among the people below. Their powers collided with enough force to scar the city and transform both sisters' futures. Morgana did not vanish because she lacked the ability to continue. She chose to remain connected to mortal suffering, binding her wings and withdrawing into shadow. Her defensive power deserves as much attention as her attacks. A shield capable of resisting magical influence can decide a conflict without producing a spectacular crater. Against possession, curses, bindings, or hostile sorcery, Morgana may protect an ally who possesses the physical strength to finish a battle. Rankings often favor visible destruction, though Runeterra repeatedly shows that protection and control can defeat an opponent with greater raw force. Morgana also understands human weakness in a way many celestial beings reject. She believes justice without compassion becomes another form of cruelty, and that belief gives her patience with people who fail, change, and try again. An immortal who can work through hidden communities and forgotten traditions may shape history more quietly than an emperor, but not less deeply. Her lower placement compared with Kael comes from chosen limitation. Morgana suppresses parts of her celestial nature, remains close to the mortal realm, and avoids ruling through open displays of power. The lore does not show her reaching the same increasingly transcendent state associated with Kael's long absence near the celestial heights of Targon. Number 16 recognizes that Morgana survived a clash with her sister, carries half of an aspect's inherited force, and can bind or protect through celestial magic. She remains below Kael because the next entry has spent centuries embracing the divine side Morgana deliberately restrained. Number 15. Kael stands at number 15 because she accepted the celestial inheritance Morgana resisted. Both sisters began with a divided share of the aspect of justice's power, yet Kael spent the centuries after their separation moving closer to the celestial realm and further from ordinary human limitation. During the early years of Demacia, Kael served as a winged protector. Her swords carried divine fire, and her sense of justice promised order in an age still marked by the Rune Wars. People who had watched magic destroy homes and families could understand the appeal of a guardian who punished wrongdoing with certainty. Certainty became the danger. Kael increasingly viewed emotion as a source of corruption and believed justice had to rise above mortal weakness. When violence in Demacia took someone close to the sisters, Kael's answer threatened to make the entire city share the punishment. Morgana opposed her, and the two released celestial force against one another until grief stopped what law could not. That clash is the clearest comparison between them. Their inherited power was once balanced closely enough that neither simply erased the other. The difference developed afterward. Morgana bound her wings and remained among mortals, while Kael left the physical realm to seek greater unity with the celestial ideal she represented. Kael's power develops through stages, with additional wings and stronger celestial flame representing movement away from her original mortal form. Gameplay expresses that change through levels, but the underlying theme belongs to her lore. She is becoming less like a person who wields divine fire and more like judgment given a living shape. Her weapons amplify this identity. The swords once connected to the twins and their mother are not normal steel. They carry celestial force capable of cutting through ordinary defenses, releasing waves of flame, and protecting a chosen target from harm. Against a human army, Kale's ability to fight from the air and strike across a wide area would make normal formations almost irrelevant. Still, she is not the full aspect of justice. Her power comes from inheritance, and part of that inheritance remains with Morgana. The distinction keeps her below entities whose entire existence is rooted in a natural force, a spirit domain, or a cosmic purpose. Kale may approach a celestial ideal, but the lore has not shown her forging stars, crossing realities without limit, or overpowering the greatest beings beyond Targon. Her worldview creates another limitation. Removing compassion may make judgment consistent, yet consistency can be manipulated when the rules are incomplete. Morgana sees context that Kale might dismiss, and an enemy who understands her lore could potentially shape a situation that points her immense power in the wrong direction. Number 15 places Kale above Morgana because she has pursued the celestial side of their nature for centuries and displays greater emphasis on direct divine force. The next entries move away from inherited celestial power and into the spirit gods of the Freljord, beings whose identities are tied to the land, its people, and the stories told across generations. Number 14. Anivia takes number 14 as the Cryophoenix, a Freljordian spirit god associated with ice, renewal, sacrifice, and the turning of ages. Unlike Kale, she was not born from a mortal family carrying part of an aspect. Anivia belongs to a spiritual order that existed before the nations of modern Runeterra took their current forms. Her life follows a cycle. When Anivia falls, an egg remains, and from that state she can eventually return. This renewal makes ordinary victory unreliable. An army might bring down her visible form, but that does not guarantee the end of the being behind it. Time, protection, and the spiritual conditions of the Freljord can restore what a battlefield appears to have defeated. Anivia is deeply connected to the land. She has witnessed cycles of destruction and rebirth across the Freljord, and her presence carries winter itself. Ice, storm, and cold are not tools she studied from a book. They express her nature. Where Lysandra twists magical ice through sorcery and ancient bargains, Anivia represents the living spirit of the frozen region. Her relationship with mortals separates her from Volibear. Anivia repeatedly places herself between the Freljord and forces that would destroy it, even when protection demands personal sacrifice. She values the tribes not merely as sources of worship, but as lives capable of shaping the future. That bond can strengthen a spirit god through memory and belief, while also giving her reasons to risk herself. One of the most important ideas in her lore is that the Freljord has passed through many eras before the present conflict between Ash, Sejuani, and Lysandra. Anivia remembers enough of those cycles to recognize patterns mortals mistake for permanent truths. A kingdom may appear unstoppable for one lifetime and vanish before her next rebirth. Her powers can freeze broad areas, summon storms, form walls of ice, and alter the movement of entire groups. She does not need to meet every soldier individually. The environment becomes her weapon and her protection, which is especially decisive in a region where cold already determines whether an army can travel, eat, or survive. Anivia ranks below her brothers for reasons more complicated than the outcome of one direct fight. Spirit gods change with belief, circumstance, and the stories attached to them. Volibear's destructive identity and Ornn's primeval feats receive clearer emphasis in accounts of the land's shaping, while Anivia's greatest strength is renewal and guardianship rather than conquest. She also depends on a cycle that can leave her vulnerable. An egg promising rebirth is not the same as immediate invincibility. An enemy who understands that state might imprison, corrupt, or isolate it before Anivia returns. Spiritual immortality creates new rules, not the absence of all limits. Number 14 recognizes that Kael may possess greater focused celestial fire. While Anivia is harder to remove from the world and influences the climate and destiny of an entire region. Her brothers rank higher because their oldest legends describe them shaping the Freljord through elemental acts of creation and destruction. Ornn stands at number 13 as the Freljordian spirit of forging, craftsmanship, fire, and the deep strength beneath mountains. He rarely seeks worship, armies, or political control. That solitude can make him appear less powerful than louder gods, though the things attributed to his labor reveal a scale most rulers could never approach. Ornn's home lies beneath Hearthhome, where volcanic heat turns the mountain into a divine forge. He purifies ore in molten rock and creates objects of unmatched quality, not because a kingdom commissions them, but because making something well is the purpose around which his existence is organized. His legends describe more than weapons. Ornn's work shaped landmarks, redirected natural forces, and produced artifacts that later became central to other stories. The line between smithing and world-building becomes thin when the smith can use mountains as workshops and lava as a tool. This creative power makes him different from a destructive mage. A spell may release enormous force once, while a divine artifact can influence centuries after its maker walks away. Ornn's greatest objects remain dangerous or valuable because their design preserves intention in material form. A ruler who gains one of them can change history without ever meeting the god who made it. He also possesses tremendous direct strength. Ornn can command fire from the earth, withstand extreme heat, and confront other Freljordian deities through physical and elemental power. His famous conflict with Volibear damaged Hearthhome and became a wound in both their histories. Even a reluctant god cannot avoid battle when another god brings war to his door. Ornn's independence from worship is difficult to measure. Freljordian spirit gods are connected to belief, but Ornn does not cultivate followers in the way Volibear does. Stories of him survive through craftspeople, old tribes, and the quiet respect given to work done properly. That quieter belief may reduce his visible presence without proving that his underlying power has vanished. His temperament limits his influence. Ornn can create wonders, yet he does not spend every age directing civilization with them. The loss of followers at Hearthhome pushed him further into isolation, and perfectionism often matters more to him than the requests of mortals. Power held by someone who refuses most causes is less available to reshape the world than equal power held by an active conqueror. The placement above Anivia rests on the scope of Ornn's feats and his ability to create lasting sources of power. Anivia renews and protects, while Ornn can produce the tool, structure, or weapon around which an era turns. The difference is narrow and could change with future stories. Number 13 remains below Volibear because the storm god actively gathers belief, spreads his influence through the Ursine, and embodies the untamed violence of the Freljord on a scale that has repeatedly forced Ornn to respond. Number 12. Volibear takes number 12 as the Relentless Storm, an ancient Freljordian spirit god whose identity is bound to wilderness, thunder, war, and resistance to civilization. To his followers, he is not a creature who controls the storm. He is the storm given intention. The oldest tales place Volibear before mortal settlement in the Freljord. He and his demigod kin participated in shaping the land, though different tribes tell those events in different ways. That uncertainty is natural for a spirit god. Belief does not preserve one clean historical record, it produces overlapping stories that can all carry part of the being. Volibear wants the Freljord returned to an older state, before cities, laws, and comfortable structures separated people from hardship. He sees civilization as weakness and demands survival through strength. The Ursine who answer him reflect that belief by abandoning parts of ordinary humanity and embracing violent transformation. Worship gives him a network that Ornn lacks. Volibear can appear through storms, visions, animals, and followers whose bodies carry signs of his influence. A ruler opposing him does not face one large enemy on an open field. The threat can enter through fear of winter, resentment towards cities, and tribes that interpret destruction as sacred restoration. His direct power is equally imposing. Lightning answers him, physical size changes with his manifestation, and normal fortifications offer little security against a god associated with tearing down the very idea of safety. In stories of his clash with Ornn, divine violence devastated the place around them and destroyed lives that Ornn had welcomed into Hearthhome. That conflict also reveals Volibear's limitation. He is immensely powerful, but not beyond resistance from other spirit gods. Ornn can oppose him, Anivia rejects his path, and mortal belief can shift away from the old ways he represents. A god fed by worship may grow when people fear and honor him, then weaken when the stories fade. Volibear's hatred of civilization makes strategy narrow. He can destroy a settlement more easily than he can govern what follows. Every victory that leaves survivors may convince some people that walls, alliances, and technology are even more necessary. Destruction can spread the idea he wants to erase. Number 12 places him above Ornn because he actively converts worship into a regional movement and brings elemental force directly into mortal conflicts. He does not reach the next tier because the following being built power across both life and death, creating an empire in a realm most warriors reach only once. Number 11. Mordekaiser stands at number 11 because physical defeat has already failed to end him more than once. He began as the mortal warlord San Uzal, conquered through strength and terror, passed into death, rejected the emptiness he found there, and turned that realm into the foundation of a new empire. During his mortal life, San Uzal believed conquest would earn him a place among honored powers after death. Instead, the promised glory did not appear. The afterlife he entered seemed empty, filled with fading souls and no throne waiting to receive him. Where another person might have surrendered to that truth, he treated it as a territory that had not yet been conquered. He learned the language spoken by the dead, preserved his identity through force of will, and manipulated sorcerers in the living world into bringing him back. The armor known as Mordekaiser became a vessel for that returning spirit. His second reign then combined military conquest with necromancy, allowing defeated souls to become resources rather than merely casualties of war. The people who eventually betrayed him believed they had ended his empire. Mordekaiser allowed his physical form to be defeated because his deeper purpose had already moved beyond the living world. Back in the realm of death, he shaped the souls gathered through conquest into structures, servants, and the growing dominion called Mitna Raknan. This is the reason he ranks above the Freljordian gods, in a list focused on threat and usable power. Ornn and Volibear embody forces older than Mordekaiser's mortal name, but Mordekaiser has built a deliberate system for converting every conflict into future strength. An opponent who falls to him may join the army waiting for his next return. His magic also crosses boundaries. Necromancy lets him bind souls, animate armor, communicate across realms, and create a private domain in death. Stopping his body does not stop the intelligence directing the campaign. Any lasting victory would require reaching the realm he controls and finding a way to destroy or contain the spirit behind the armor. Mordekaiser remains below Aatrox because the lore has not shown him destroying a celestial aspect in direct combat, while Aatrox has achieved exactly that. His army and preparation may make him the more dangerous conqueror over time, but Aatrox carries the stronger confirmed single combat feat. Another limit is that Mordekaiser's return still requires paths between realms, knowledge, and agents. He has planned for those needs, yet planning is not the same as complete freedom. LeBlanc and the Black Rose have spent generations trying to prevent him from reclaiming the living empire he once held. Number 11 recognizes a conqueror whose territory includes the afterlife and whose defeats can become stages of a longer strategy. The top 10 begins with a Darkin who once defended the world from the void, later became one of its greatest enemies, and proved that even a celestial god could fall before his blade. Number 10. Aatrox opens the top 10 because he has one of the strongest direct combat feats in all of Runeterra's confirmed lore. He fought the aspect of war, destroyed the celestial being within its mortal host, and left behind a man who survived only because his own will refused to disappear with the god. Before becoming a Darkin, Aatrox was a celebrated Ascended of Shurima. He fought in the Empire's wars, and later joined the defense against the Void at Acacia. The Ascended succeeded in containing that disaster, but exposure to the conflict and the collapse of the Empire changed many of them. Without a shared purpose or emperor, powerful god warriors turned against one another and brought devastation to the lands they once protected. Aatrox became one of the most feared Darkin. Mortal and celestial intervention eventually stopped those wars by sealing surviving Darkin into their own weapons. This punishment did not destroy Aatrox's awareness. His essence remained trapped within the Great Sword, conscious but unable to return in his original ascended body. When a mortal tries to wield the weapon, Aatrox can seize control and transform that host. One body is rarely enough. He builds a larger form from the material available to him, forcing mortal flesh into an approximation of the god warrior he remembers. The body degrades under the power contained inside it, so Aatrox must continue conquering new hosts and rebuilding. That limitation produces both strength and instability. Aatrox can increase his visible size and recover from terrible damage as long as enough living material is available, which makes him extraordinarily difficult to stop in the middle of a war. At the same time, his body is a temporary construction. Separating him from hosts can return his consciousness to the prison of the blade. The battle with Pantheon remains decisive. Atreus climbed Mount Targon and became the mortal vessel of the aspect of war, allowing the celestial entity to act through him. Aatrox defeated them and extinguished the aspect's presence. Atreus later rose again through human determination and fought Aatrox, proving that the man had not been completely erased, but the celestial being called Pantheon was gone. Killing an aspect does not automatically make Aatrox stronger than every celestial entity. Circumstance matters, and Targon's powers vary in role and expression. It does prove that he can harm a level of existence most warriors cannot even reach. Mordekaiser's long strategy is frightening, while Aatrox has already cut down a god in direct battle. His ambition now points toward destruction on an apocalyptic scale. Aatrox does not want a kingdom arranged around stable laws. He brings war against the world itself, driven by rage accumulated through centuries of imprisonment and the loss of everything he once understood himself to be. Number 10 reflects that unmatched combination of ascended origin, Darkin endurance, adaptive physical form, and a confirmed victory over an aspect. He remains below the next being because she is not trying to defeat one god or empire. She is building a new void-born reality designed to consume and replace the world. Number 9. Belveth takes number 9 as the Empress of the Void, though her relationship with the Void is unlike that of the Watchers, who first shaped its incursions into reality. She emerged after the Void consumed the city of Belveth and everything around it, combining stolen memories, forms, and desires into a new intelligence. This origin makes her both young and vast. Compared with ancient demons or celestial travelers, Belveth has existed for a short time, yet she was born from the destruction of an entire city and carries a distorted accumulation of the lives absorbed there. Her human-like appearance is a lure and a mask, while the larger creature behind it better represents the force she commands. The Void traditionally responds to reality as something alien. Its creatures enter the material world, adapt to physical rules, consume and change. Belveth represents a new direction. She does not want simple emptiness. She wants a reality of her own, the Lavender Sea, built from everything she consumes and controlled through her will. That goal puts her in conflict with the Watchers. Belveth calls herself an Empress because she values identity, hierarchy, and a future shaped around her existence. The Watchers seek silence and the end of reality's disturbance. To them, her kingdom is another intolerable form of being. Her forces include countless void remora and other creatures created or directed through the Lavender Sea. Each part of the world she absorbs can become material for expansion. This resembles Viego's ability to turn fallen enemies into servants, but the scale and direction differ. Viego spreads a curse born from one catastrophe, while Belveth is developing an ecosystem capable of replacing what it consumes. She is also intelligent enough to negotiate. Her encounter with Kaiser showed that Belveth can explain a threat, offer a temporary alignment of interests, and recognize that the Watchers endanger her plans. A mind capable of diplomacy is more dangerous than a creature driven only by hunger, because it can use enemies against one another before consuming whoever remains. Her limits are growth and uncertainty. Belveth presents herself as inevitable, but much of her empire is still forming. The full Lavender Sea has not replaced Runeterra, and determined individuals can survive encounters with her. Her grandest claims describe intention as much as completed fact. That is why she ranks below the ancient powers ahead. Potential matters, but the list does not treat a predicted future as though it has already happened. Belveth may eventually rise higher than nearly every being named here if her expansion continues. In the current lore, she is an enormous developing threat rather than the completed ruler of a consumed world. Number 9 places her above Aatrox because her victory condition operates at the scale of reality and because she commands a growing void-born domain rather than one unstable physical form. The next being is older, rooted in a fundamental emotion and described through the oldest fears remembered by mortals. Number 8. Fiddlesticks takes number 8 as the ancient fear. A primordial demon associated with one of the most basic emotions experienced by living minds. It is not a person who learned forbidden magic and became monstrous. It is a predatory spiritual intelligence whose existence reaches back toward the earliest fear in Runeterra. Demons feed on emotions, but not every demon belongs to the same level. Some attach themselves to specific appetites or patterns of suffering. Fiddlesticks occupies a deeper place in that spiritual hierarchy. Fear appears wherever living beings recognize danger, imagine what might be hiding beyond sight, or remember a sound connected to loss. The scarecrow seen in Demacia is not necessarily the complete being. It is a crude collection of wood, metal, cloth, and stolen objects wrapped around something that does not naturally possess a human shape. That constructed body allows fiddlesticks to move through the physical world and imitate enough of a person to draw victims closer. Its imitations are especially disturbing because they are not normal conversation. Fiddlesticks repeats fragments of voices and moments connected to terror. This suggests an intelligence that consumes emotional experience without understanding human meaning in the same way a person would. It knows which sound opens the wound, even if it does not care about the story behind it. Power based on fear scales through the reaction of others. A large army approaching a normal monster may gain confidence from its numbers, while an army approaching fiddlesticks provides thousands of minds capable of spreading panic through one another. Discipline helps, yet discipline does not eliminate the instinct the demon represents. Fiddlesticks is also linked to the idea of 10 primordial demons, with fear identified as one of the foundational forces among them. The exact structure remains deliberately incomplete in current lore. Ashlesh, the demon of joy, gives another confirmed point in that larger system, while other names and symbols have not all received full explanations. This mystery prevents overstatement. Being ancient does not prove fiddlesticks can erase a continent with one action, and the stories usually present it hunting around the edges of mortal society rather than openly ruling nations. It can be driven away or contained through knowledge that has not yet been fully revealed. Its placement above Belveth comes from depth rather than demonstrated territory. Belveth may command the larger visible army, but Fiddlesticks is rooted in an emotion that follows living minds across cultures and borders. Destroying one scarecrow body would not necessarily end the demon connected to that universal fear. Number 8 remains below kindred because fear may accompany almost every life, but death eventually reaches every mortal life without exception. The difference is not that kindred wins every duel. It is that their domain is woven into the final boundary all mortals must face. Number 7. Kindred stands at number 7 as the twin essence of death recognized across much of Runeterra. Lamb offers a swift ending to those who accept what is coming, while Wolf pursues those who flee. Together, they represent a division in how mortals meet the same unavoidable boundary. The stories told about kindred vary by culture. Names, masks, rituals, and interpretations change, which means the figures known as Lamb and Wolf may not be the only way death appears. Runeterra's spirit realm responds to belief, and the legends surrounding death can create or sustain different masked beings. This becomes clearer in stories about the Mask Mother and other death spirits. Kindred is immensely widespread, but not necessarily the only death entity or the literal creator of death itself. The distinction lowers them from the very top of the list. Representing a universal event does not automatically mean controlling every soul in every realm. Within their domain, however, kindred is extraordinarily powerful. Mortals cannot defeat death by winning a battle. A person might avoid one danger, receive magical healing, become undead, or extend life through transformation, yet all of those paths create new conditions rather than a permanent victory over the idea kindred represents. Their influence also ignores political boundaries. Demacia, Noxus, the Freljord, Bilgewater, and distant cultures disagree about law, magic, and religion, while each has a relationship with death. A spirit carried through that many traditions gains a reach no regional king can reproduce. Kindred's method is not conquest. They do not need a throne, taxes, fortresses, or an army occupying roads. Their power appears at a personal threshold, which makes it quieter than the ruination and more constant. Empires rise under the illusion that their victories are permanent, then every emperor eventually reaches the same hunters as the people once ruled. Undeath complicates the picture. The Shadow Isles contain spirits trapped outside the natural passage kindred represents, and powerful necromancers such as Mordekaiser can build systems inside death rather than simply submitting to it. These exceptions show that Runeterra's afterlife contains competing rules, realms, and entities. Belief also creates vulnerability. A forgotten spirit can face the Etherfiend, the end that comes when no one remembers the mask. Kindred may hunt mortals, yet the stories suggest even death gods can confront a final disappearance if their names vanish from every mind. Number 7 reflects near-universal spiritual reach and the inability of ordinary force to defeat what kindred represents. The next being ranks higher because she originates from celestial dimensions, chose mortality, and can direct healing power across distances that make normal physical conflict almost beside the point. Number 6. Soraka takes number 6 because she is a celestial being who voluntarily entered mortal existence and continues to channel power from beyond it. Her role focuses on healing rather than destruction, which often causes her to be underestimated in rankings built around visible damage. Before walking Runeterra, Soraka belonged to celestial dimensions beyond Mount Targon. She gave up immortality to live among mortals and guide them away from cycles of violence. That choice placed cosmic power inside a physical form that experiences pain when she channels more energy than the body can safely hold. The limitation is real, but so is the power passing through it. Soraka can call on the stars, restore people near death, cleanse harmful magic, and sense suffering over great distances. Her greatest abilities are not confined to the person standing directly in front of her. A plea from far away can reach her awareness, and her answer can cross the world. Healing changes the meaning of power. An enemy may spend years building the weapon needed to defeat a legendary warrior, only for Soraka to restore that defender and undo the expected result. She can preserve knowledge, leadership, and hope that a conqueror intended to remove. The larger the conflict, the more valuable that intervention becomes. Her compassion is deliberate rather than naive. Soraka has watched mortals repeat destructive choices and still believes they can become better. She may even heal those who oppose her, because her purpose is not to sort the world into permanent categories of worthy and unworthy people. That approach differs sharply from Kael's celestial justice. Her stories also connect her to the fate of the world rather than one nation. Soraka reads patterns in the heavens and recognizes dangers that mortal politics may not notice until too late. Knowledge of cosmic movement gives her warning before some events reach the physical world. Her position above kindred does not mean that healing abolishes death. It does not. Soraka ranks higher as an active celestial entity whose power can intervene across the world, and whose original nature comes from beyond the system of belief sustaining many Runeterran spirits. Kindred has the broader, inevitable domain, while Soraka demonstrates greater freedom to choose how and where celestial force enters mortal life. Her body keeps her from the top 5. Every major act carries pain and risk, because physical existence cannot comfortably contain what she once was. She chose that limit as the price of helping mortals directly. A being can be more admirable because of a sacrifice, while becoming less powerful in practical terms. Number 6 recognizes a celestial whose gentle purpose hides astonishing reach. The top 5 begins with the aspect of Twilight, whose presence can bend the mathematics of reality and announce changes that affect entire worlds. Number 5. Zoe takes number 5 as the mortal host and living embodiment of the aspect of Twilight. The title sounds gentle beside names such as World Ender or Ancient Fear, but Twilight represents change, transition, messages, imagination, and the sudden breaking of rules people assumed were permanent. Before becoming an aspect, Zoe was a young girl living near Mount Targon. She did not complete the same severe climb associated with many other Targonian hosts. The celestial power of twilight recognized something in her unpredictable nature and created a path that ignored the expected ritual. That beginning already revealed the relationship between Zoe and boundaries. Rules around her are more like suggestions reality has not reconsidered yet. The union did not erase her personality. Zoe remained playful, curious, easily distracted, and capable of treating cosmic events with the attention another person might give a new game. This is one of the reasons her power is dangerous. A solemn conqueror announces intention through armies and threats, while Zoe can produce enormous consequences without hatred or a carefully designed campaign. Her official description states that her mere presence can warp the arcane mathematics governing realities. That wording places her beyond a powerful mage who manipulates energy within known laws. Zoe affects the laws themselves, sometimes causing disasters without intending harm. A portal opened for amusement can connect places that were never meant to touch. And a message delivered casually may announce the end of an age. As Targon's cosmic messenger, she travels through dimensions and across extraordinary distances. Thousands of years can pass in the mortal world, while her own experience of time remains far shorter. This freedom from ordinary travel and aging makes political containment nearly impossible. A fortress can keep out an army, but it cannot reliably stop someone who opens a doorway through the space beside it. Zoe's portals provide combat power as well as movement. Distance becomes flexible, attacks can arrive from impossible directions, and an object released in one place can cross a boundary before striking somewhere else. She can also manipulate sleep, collect spells, and interact with magical effects as though the carefully guarded tools of other mages were interesting objects left on the ground. Her relationship with Aurelian's soul shows confidence around a being who forges stars. Zoe does not control him in the way Targon's crown once did, and the difference matters. Still, she can approach and communicate with him without responding like a mortal standing before an incomprehensible god. Familiarity does not prove equality, though it confirms that her normal environment includes powers far beyond the physical world. Twilight's earlier host, Maisha, played a central role in ending the Darkin Wars. She gave mortals the knowledge needed to trap Darkin within their weapons, changing a conflict among corrupted Ascended that had devastated large regions. Zoe is not Maisha, and it would be wrong to transfer every action of a previous host directly to her. The shared aspect does show the scale at which Twilight intervenes in history. Zoe ranks below Nagakaboros, Bard, Aurelian's Soul, and the Watchers because her greatest confirmed descriptions concern possibility, distortion, and cosmic access, while her largest feats remain less clearly measured than theirs. She can bend reality, but the law has not shown her creating stars or threatening to erase existence. Immense capability surrounds her, yet the full boundary of that capability remains intentionally uncertain. Her personality is another practical limit. Zoe may understand cosmic duties through instinct, though she does not approach them with the sustained discipline of a strategist. She can miss the mortal importance of an event that seems small from her perspective. A power capable of going almost anywhere is not always focused on the place that needs it most. This creates a strange kind of vulnerability. Zoe's confidence comes from genuine strength, but confidence can become carelessness. She remains joined with a mortal host, possesses recognizable attachments, and can be surprised by consequences that were obvious to people living inside the rules she treats as flexible. Number 5 gives full weight to an aspect whose arrival can signal world-changing events, and whose presence interferes with reality's structure. She sits above Soraka because her current form appears less restricted by a fragile mortal body, and because dimensional travel belongs naturally to her role. She stays below the next entry because the Great Kraken is worshipped as a god of life, motion, spirit, and the universal demand that existence continue to change. Number 4. Nagakaboros takes number 4 as the divine power served by Illaoi and the Buru people of the Serpent Isles. The being is known through titles such as the Great Kraken and the Bearded Lady, but every image used by mortals captures only part of what the faith describes. The central principle of Nagakaboros is motion. Life must grow, choose, struggle, and continue forward. Stagnation is not merely laziness within this belief, it is a rejection of the condition that makes life meaningful. Illaoi tests people by drawing out the spirit and forcing them to prove that desire still moves through them. This philosophy carries supernatural force. Illaoi's golden idol acts as a focus through which the god can manifest enormous spectral tentacles, strike enemies, and pull a person's spiritual essence into direct confrontation. The priestess is powerful, but the lore makes clear that she does not fight alone. Her strength is an expression of something vastly larger. Nagakaboros also opposes undeath at a fundamental level. The black mist traps souls in repetition, binding them to obsession and preventing the natural movement of life and death. To the Buru faith, that frozen state violates the Great Kraken's law. This makes Nagakaboros one of the few divine forces conceptually positioned against the Shadow Isles rather than merely threatened by them. Illaoi's encounter with the ruined king demonstrates that the test can reach a being at the center of the mist. She did not permanently destroy Viego or cleanse the Isles, so the event should not be exaggerated into effortless victory over the entire ruination. It did show that the god's spiritual authority can touch an unliving king, protected by one of the world's largest curses. The scale of Nagakaboros is difficult to define because the lore intentionally presents it through religion. Worshippers describe a power extending through life and the universe, while outside observers experience specific manifestations around temples, idols, seas, and chosen priests. A believer's theological claim is not identical to an independently measured feat. That uncertainty is why the Great Kraken does not automatically take first place. Some older discussions treated Nagakaboros as unquestionably above every celestial being, but current canon gives fewer direct comparisons than such a conclusion would require. The safe statement is still enormous. An elder god associated with life and motion can act on bodies and souls through a regional faith that has resisted the black mist for generations. Belief may strengthen or shape this presence. The Buru do not worship a passive image placed behind glass. Their culture expresses motion through action, travel, challenge, and the rejection of spiritual stillness. Each practice reinforces a living relationship between the god and the people, rather than a distant story about an absent creator. Nagakaboros differs from kindred in a useful way. Kindred represents the ending mortal's face, while the Great Kraken demands movement throughout life and resists the unnatural refusal to progress. One appears at a final boundary, the other judges whether a living spirit is truly alive. Their domains overlap without providing a simple duel that would settle which concept defeats the other. The god also differs from the Freljordian demigods. Ornn, Anivia, and Volibear are tied strongly to one region and its stories. Nagakaboros begins with the Serpent Isles, but points toward a broader principle. Seas move, lives change, and spirits either pursue purpose or become trapped. The symbolism travels easily beyond one coastline. Its primary practical limitation is mediation. Most confirmed actions come through Ilawi, an idol, temple traditions, or spiritual tests. The law does not regularly show the complete God entering the physical world as one measurable body. A manifestation powerful enough to dominate Bilgewater is not necessarily the whole being, yet it also means the whole being's direct combat strength cannot be measured honestly. Number 4 respects the spiritual scale without turning theology into a proven calculation. Nagakaburos stands above Zoe because its influence is rooted in a broad law of life, and because its power directly contests stagnation, possession, and undeath. The next entity ranks higher through clear cosmic mobility and a purpose connected to preserving the conditions under which life can exist across the universe. Number 3. Bard takes number 3 as the wandering caretaker, a traveler from beyond the stars who intervenes when powerful artifacts or cosmic imbalances threaten the continuation of life. He rarely communicates through ordinary language, and that silence makes his strength easy to underestimate. Bard existed beyond the material realm before Runeterra's civilizations formed their oldest records. Celestial music and patterns guided his awareness, allowing him to recognize balance across distances no mortal map could contain. When the developing world and its magic created a dangerous disturbance, he entered physical reality to investigate. The body seen by mortals is a chosen form rather than a complete explanation of what Bard is. Cloth, mask, and simple movements make him approachable enough to walk through Runeterra, while the being behind that appearance belongs to a cosmic order. His meeps are lesser spirits drawn to him, companions whose cheerful behavior contrasts with the scale of his responsibilities. Bard's central power is movement across boundaries. Magical journeys open paths through barriers, while his travels carry him between locations and realms according to a logic other beings may not recognize. Walls, mountains, sealed chambers, and national borders mean little to someone whose role requires reaching dangerous magic before it destabilizes the world. His interest in artifacts is not collecting for status. Bard removes, relocates, or protects objects whose power could create catastrophic imbalance. A mortal ruler sees a weapon capable of winning a war, while Bard may see a vibration that will eventually damage the conditions supporting life. The difference in perspective explains why his interventions can seem confusing or even harmful in the moment. Tempered fate reveals another extraordinary part of his power. Bard can place beings and objects into a state of magical stasis, temporarily separating them from normal action and harm. In gameplay, this occurs within a limited area for balance, but the lore theme is larger. Bard interacts with time and fate as forces that can be paused, redirected, and preserved. Stasis is more versatile than destruction. It can stop a weapon before impact, preserve something through a catastrophe, prevent an enemy from acting, or protect a structure while danger passes around it. A being capable of choosing the correct moment can decide a conflict without overpowering every participant. Bard also operates without the same dependence on mortal belief shown by many spirit gods. Songs about him exist across Runeterra, yet those songs do not appear to create him. He came from beyond the stars and entered the world because a cosmic disturbance required attention. Forgetting his name would not clearly erase the being who heard the universe before mortal language described it. His purpose prevents a simple comparison with Aurelian's soul. Bard preserves balance, Aurelian creates stars, and carries destructive power on a far larger visible scale. Bard may understand cosmic systems and possess tools capable of restraining danger, but the lore does not confirm that he could overpower the Starforger in a direct confrontation. This is where intelligence and mission matter again. Bard does not need to defeat a stronger entity if he can remove the artifact causing conflict, close the path leading to disaster, or place a key object outside an enemy's reach. A contest decided through balance can favor the caretaker, even when a contest decided through force would not. His limitation is selectivity. Bard serves the greater continuation of life. Not every person caught in every tragedy. From a mortal perspective, his choices can appear indifferent. He may allow a local loss because preventing it would produce a greater imbalance elsewhere. Cosmic responsibility does not guarantee the kind of rescue individuals hope to receive. The mysterious nature of his feats also demands restraint. Bard is clearly ancient, celestial, and able to cross realms, but mystery should not become permission to assign any ability the story has not shown. He ranks at number 3 because his confirmed role covers cosmic balance and dangerous magic across worlds, not because every unanswered question must have the largest possible answer. Number 3 places Bard above Nagakaboros due to his independence from regional worship, freedom across cosmic boundaries, and direct purpose in maintaining conditions where life can endure. Only 2 entries remain. The first is a dragon who filled the darkness of space with stars, while the last consists of entities that regard those stars and everything around them as an intolerable disturbance. Number 2. Aurelian Soul. Aurelian Soul takes number 2 as the Star Forger, the clearest example of personal cosmic power in the setting. He did not discover a star, inherit control of one, or become the host of a concept connected to starlight. He creates stars as works of celestial design. Before Runeterra's people raised cities or named constellations, Aurelian Soul traveled the cosmos, shaping wonders in the emptiness. Stars were part of his craft, and the light admired by mortals came from acts he considered expressions of genius. The gap between his normal scale and mortal civilization is almost impossible to overstate. Runeterra attracted his attention because of its unusual magic. The celestial powers of Targon approached him through mortal worshippers and offered a jeweled crown as a sign of respect. Aurelian accepted it, only to discover that the gift was a trap. The crown bound him to Targon's will and allowed the aspects to command his power. This enslavement defines his story because it proves both vulnerability and magnitude. Targon did not defeat him by matching star against star in open combat. It used deception and specialized celestial magic. Once bound, Aurelian became a weapon directed against threats the aspects considered dangerous, including void incursions. The crown also punished resistance by harming stars connected to him. That control forced obedience through the destruction of the creations he valued, making the prison emotional as well as magical. Over ages, the hold weakened as Targon's influence changed, and the magic binding him lost strength. Aurelian's approach toward freedom has consequences larger than a change in one character's location. He remembers the deception, despises the beings who used him, and can look at Runeterra as a small world responsible for an ancient humiliation. A mortal empire preparing for his anger would face an opponent whose ordinary works burn across the sky. His abilities involve stellar fire, gravitational force, flight across the cosmos, singularities, and the movement of stars. The language used around him does not treat these as metaphors for normal elemental magic. Aurelian operates with the materials and forces of space. One of his stories shows him confronting a void breach under Targonian command. Even while restricted, his response demonstrates that celestial fire can close or overwhelm an incursion that mortal armies could barely understand. This becomes relevant to the final ranking, though it does not settle the question of every watcher against Aurelian's soul in every circumstance. He does not take number 1 because of a difference in intent and category. Aurelian is an enormously powerful being within existence. He creates structure, light, and cosmic wonders. The Watchers originate outside that reality and seek to end the conditions that allow any of those wonders to exist. The comparison remains uncertain. Aurelian could likely destroy many Voidborn and close breaches, and his contempt suggests confidence against threats that terrify mortals. The greatest Watchers, however, are presented as entities whose full arrival would threaten reality on a scale beyond one battlefield. Lysandra did not defeat them through superior power. She prevented their complete emergence with a unique sacrifice and an ancient prison. Aurelian's crown proves he can be bound. The trap required celestial knowledge and deception, but it worked for ages. Any ranking that calls him absolutely unstoppable would ignore the central condition of his biography. Cosmic strength does not prevent specialized magic from finding a rule even a star dragon must obey. His personality also matters. Pride drew him close enough to accept Targon's gift, and pride still shapes the revenge he imagines. He recognizes his own magnificence accurately, yet accurate pride can still narrow attention. Mortals were insignificant to him until their celestial patrons placed a crown on his head. None of those limits reduce the central fact. Aurelian's soul creates stars, travels the cosmos, manipulates forces on an astronomical scale, and may be capable of devastating Runeterra if he directs his full anger toward it. Every emperor, ascended warrior, spirit god, and demon below him occupies a world that exists beneath lights he knows how to make. Number 2 belongs to the most powerful, clearly individual character whose feats can be described through creation on a cosmic scale. Number 1 belongs to the beings trapped beneath the Freljord, whose awakening represents not conquest, corruption, or a new empire, but the possible unmaking of reality itself. Number 1. The Watchers take Number 1 as entities from beyond material reality, whose objective is to silence existence. They are not Voidborn creatures such as Rek'Sai, Vel'Koz, or Kha'Zix. Voidborn are shaped for entry into the physical world, while the Watchers are the deeper intelligences whose awareness preceded those adaptations. Before contact with reality, the Watchers existed in a state without the sensations, time, and change familiar to living beings. The emergence of the universe introduced something alien. Existence moved, light spread, minds dreamed. And the quiet beyond reality could no longer remain undisturbed. The Watchers became aware of that disturbance and wanted it ended. Their purpose is not hunger in the ordinary animal sense, and it is not imperial ambition like Mordekaiser's. They do not want citizens, monuments, or a throne. The complete end of the offending reality is the goal. Contact required paths into the material world. The Watchers reached Lysandra in the ancient Freljord and offered power to her and her sisters. That bargain created servants capable of preparing the way, but it also gave Lysandra enough understanding to recognize what would happen when her patrons crossed fully into Runeterra. When the Watchers emerged, scale became a problem even before power was measured. The physical realm forced impossible beings into forms that could occupy space, and the crossing left them vulnerable for a brief moment of transition. Lysandra used that moment. Through the sacrifice of those gathered around the breach, she created the true ice prison that still holds them beneath the howling abyss. The victory was extraordinary, though it was not permanent. The Watchers dream beneath the ice, and Lysandra works continuously to keep those dreams occupied. She hides the truth, controls the Frostguard, and searches for new ways to delay their awakening, because the original seal is not guaranteed to last forever. Even imprisoned, their influence reaches outward. Dreams, corrupted servants, Voidborn activity. and the pressure placed on reality all point toward a threat that has not needed complete freedom to shape history. The world above lives because the prison continues, not because the beings inside accepted defeat. The Voidborn help explain their method. Reality follows laws the Void did not originally understand, so creatures enter, consume information, and adapt. Vel'Koz disassembles knowledge through observation and destruction. Other Voidborn develop bodies suited to different environments and forms of predation. Each encounter teaches the Void how physical existence works. Belveth complicates this plan by using consumed reality to create a different future. She wants a lavender sea full of ordered life under her control, which makes her an enemy of the Watcher's desire for silence. The conflict proves that the Void is not one simple mind. It contains competing responses to the existence it has encountered. The Watchers stand above Aurelian's soul despite the absence of a complete battle between them, because the ranking follows threat scale and the way other cosmic powers respond to them. Aurelian can destroy Voidborn and close breaches, yet the Watcher's full entry is treated as a danger to reality rather than one world. Their objective reaches beyond destroying the stars he created. It rejects the framework in which stars can exist. That conclusion remains an interpretation, not an official result announced by Riot. A future story could reveal that Aurelian's soul can erase a Watcher with stellar fire, that Bard knows how to restore the prison, or that the Watchers differ so greatly in size that one comparison cannot apply to all of them. Current law gives no clean duel. The Watchers also possess limitations. They needed mortal agents and a breach to enter Runeterra. Crossing into physical reality made them vulnerable enough for Lyssandra's spell to work, and unfamiliarity with concepts such as time and dream created methods of delay. A being beyond reality may be stronger than its jailer, while still lacking the experience needed to escape quickly. Dreaming is now part of their prison. Lysandra can enter those dreams and shape what they experience, offering imagined worlds to keep their attention away from the weakening ice. The strategy resembles distracting an intelligence too large to overpower. It can buy centuries, though every successful delay also gives the prisoners more time to understand the weapon used against them. This creates the most frightening kind of escalation in Runeterra. A conventional enemy learns how to defeat an army. The Watchers learn how reality functions. Every sensation, creature, dream, and magical defense can become information about the system they intend to end. Number 1 belongs not to the ruler with the largest empire or the warrior with the most impressive duel, but to the beings whose successful arrival would make every lower ranking irrelevant. Nasus could preserve knowledge, Rise could guard the world runes, Soraka could heal nations, and Aurelian's soul could fill the sky with new light. Yet all of those acts depend on a reality where knowledge, life, magic, and light are allowed to continue. Conclusion: those are the 25 most powerful beings in Runeterra, beginning with Nasus at the edge of demigod strength and ending with the Watchers beyond reality. The path between them shows why power in this setting cannot be reduced to physical size or the outcome of one duel. Nasus and Renekton demonstrate what the Ascension ritual can make from exceptional mortals. Rise and Syndra show two opposite relationships with magic, one defined by restraint and the other by a refusal to be restrained. Azir, Lysandra, Viego, and Zerath prove that one transformed individual can redirect the fate of an entire civilization. Morgana and Kael reveal the disagreement hidden inside celestial justice. Anivia, Ornn, and Volibear show how gods grow through land, belief, and stories, rather than a single source of energy. Mordekaiser, Aatrox, Belveth, and Fiddlesticks move beyond ordinary survival, each continuing through a form that cannot be ended by defeating one human body. Kindred and Nagakaboros operate through spiritual laws surrounding death, life, and motion. Soraka and Zoe carry celestial power into mortal experience for very different reasons. Bard protects balance across boundaries that most people cannot perceive, while Aurelian's soul works with the materials of the cosmos itself. The Watchers stand above them because they threaten the stage on which every other struggle occurs. That does not make their victory certain. Runeterra's history is filled with weaker beings defeating stronger ones through knowledge, sacrifice, cooperation. Deception, or the discovery of one rule an enemy did not understand. Lysandra could not overpower the Watchers, so she trapped them during the moment they crossed into an unfamiliar reality. Targon could not defeat Aurelian's soul through open force, so it offered him a crown. Mortals could not destroy the Darkin, so they sealed their consciousness inside weapons. The difference between power and victory runs through every era. That is also why this ranking can change. Syndra's upper limit remains unknown. Belveth's Lavender Sea continues to grow. Kael has spent centuries moving closer to her celestial nature. Mordekaiser prepares for another return. Aurelian's soul is no longer held as firmly by Targon. And the ice above the Watchers cannot be trusted forever. For now, the list moves from warriors capable of breaking armies to entities capable of breaking the rules that permit armies, worlds, and stars to exist. Runeterra survives between those levels, protected not by one unbeatable guardian, but by an unstable balance of rivals, whose ambitions often prevent any single power from claiming everything.